The garden gnome landed with a ceramic-shattering crash against Mark Thompson's meticulously landscaped front yard. Karen Henshaw stood at the edge of his property line, her perfectly pressed khaki shorts and matching polo shirt vibrating with rage. "This is a violation," she screeched, her finger jabbing the air like a weaponized pointer. "Those sunflowers are at least 3 inches too tall." Mark blinked, half believing the scene unfolding before him. He moved to Pinewood Estates 6 months ago, transforming the previously bland quarter-acre lot into a vibrant urban oasis. Raised garden beds burst with colors, deep purple eggplants, bright red tomatoes, and yes, those controversial sunflowers that now towered well above the standard HOA-approved height of, apparently, 2.5 inches. The gnome's shattered remains looked like a ceramic crime scene. Mark counted to 10, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Karen continued her tirade. Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the Homeowners Association bylaws clearly states that decorative plantings must not exceed predetermined height restrictions. Her voice had the pitch and precision of a dog whistle mixed with a corporate training video. Mark knew Karen. Everyone in Pinewood Estates knew Karen. She was the self-appointed guardian of suburban aesthetic perfection, the type of woman who would measure grass blades with a ruler and send written warnings if a blade dared to extend 1 millimeter beyond regulation. What Karen didn't know was that Mark wasn't just a gardening enthusiast. He was a former marketing executive who'd grown tired of corporate constraints and sought freedom in suburban landscaping. And nothing, especially not a middle-aged HOA Karen, was going to clip his creative wings. "I'll be submitting a formal complaint," Karen declared, pulling out a clipboard that seemed to materialize from thin air. Her reading glasses, hanging from a beaded chain, bounced with each indignant movement. Mark smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that suggested he was about to turn this suburban skirmish into an all-out war. "By all means," he said softly, "submit your complaint." As Karen marched away, leaving a trail of crushed gnome fragments, Mark's mind was already racing. This was about more than sunflowers. This was about creative freedom. This was about pushing back against soul-crushing suburban conformity. Little did Karen know she had just unleashed something far more complicated than a height violation dispute. She had awakened Mark Thompson's competitive spirit. And in the world of HOA politics, that was a dangerous thing. Part 2, the escalation. Coming soon. 2 weeks after the Great Gnome incident, Karen's complaint had worked its way through the labyrinthine HOA bureaucracy. Mark received a formal citation, complete with a detailed breakdown of his landscaping infractions, 17 distinct violations that read like a bureaucratic fever dream. Sunflower height, exceeding maximum allowable vegetation profile. Garden bed positioning, non-standard geometric arrangement. Decorative elements, unauthorized aesthetic configuration. Mark laughed, a low chuckle that started in his chest and erupted into full-blown hilarity. Each ridiculous line was another piece of kindling for his brewing rebellion. His background in corporate marketing wasn't just a coincidence. He'd spent 15 years crafting narratives that could turn mundane products into must-have lifestyle choices. If he could rebrand low-fat yogurt as a revolutionary health movement, he could certainly transform his garden into something Karen couldn't ignore. Enter the Pinewood Estates Urban Garden Initiative, complete with corporate sponsorship. Mark's old marketing contacts came through spectacularly. Within days, he had logos, banners, and a comprehensive marketing strategy. Local organic seed companies, sustainable gardening tools manufacturers, and even a regional farm-to-table restaurant chain became interested in his project. The first banner went up precisely 3 feet tall, well within HOA height regulations, but impossible to miss. Bright green with bold white lettering, Pinewood Estates, Urban Agriculture Demonstration Site, sponsored by Green Harvest Organics. Karen's response was predictable and immediate. She marched up his driveway, her sensible walking shoes creating a military-like cadence. The clipboard was back, along with a thick rulebook tucked under her arm like a weapon. "This," she said, pointing at the banner, "is not approved signage." Mark smiled. "Actually, it is. I've already confirmed with the HOA board. Sponsorship signage for agricultural demonstration projects falls under community improvement initiatives." The words hit Karen like a carefully aimed dart. Her face transformed, first confusion, then a slow-burning anger that suggested she'd been outmaneuvered. "You're doing this to antagonize me," she accused. "I'm doing this to improve our community," Mark responded, his voice smooth as silk. Green Harvest Organics is providing free seeds to local residents. We're creating an educational garden space. Behind him, his garden was a riot of color and productivity. Tomato vines climbed carefully constructed trellises. Raised beds burst with vegetables. Pollinator gardens attracted bees and butterflies. And those sunflowers? They stood tall, defiant, beautiful. The monthly HOA meeting became a battlefield, and Mark Thompson was armed with PowerPoint presentations and corporate backing. He arrived 30 minutes early, setting up a professional display that looked more like a tech conference than a neighborhood gathering. Glossy printed boards showcase his urban garden initiative, complete with projected financial benefits for the community: solar-powered irrigation systems, sustainable landscaping, economic impact studies. Karen sat in the front row, her arms crossed, radiating disapproval like a human microwave of suburban discontent. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark began, clicking to his first slide, "Pinewood Estates isn't just a neighborhood. It's a potential model for urban agricultural sustainability." Green Harvest Organics had fully committed. Their logo was everywhere, on his garden banners, on the presentation materials, even on the complimentary notebooks distributed to HOA members. The seed company saw Mark as a marketing goldmine, a narrative of suburban revolution, packaged and ready for distribution. Numbers didn't lie. His demonstration garden was producing nearly $3,000 worth of organic produce annually. Water usage was down 40%. Property values in the immediate vicinity had increased by an estimated 7.2%. Karen's face grew progressively redder with each slide. The Asia Award members, mostly retired professionals who appreciated a well-structured argument, leaned forward. Gerald Thompson, the board president, adjusted his glasses and muttered something about innovative community development. "We're talking about more than gardening," Mark continued. "We're discussing community resilience, sustainable living, and economic innovation." When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Not polite, restrained suburban applause. Genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. Karen's clipboard trembled in her hands. The board voted unanimously to not only allow Mark's garden, but to create a special committee to explore similar initiatives throughout Pinewood Estates. Corporate sponsorships were suddenly viewed not as intrusions, but as opportunities. Karen Henshaw wasn't someone who accepted defeat gracefully. Her counterattack was methodical, precise, and absolutely ruthless. She spent weeks combing through every single municipal code, HOA regulation, and zoning law. If there was a loophole, a technicality, a microscopic regulation Mark might have overlooked, she would find it. Her first move was strategic. She submitted a comprehensive complaint documenting every single potential violation in Mark's garden. The document was a masterpiece of bureaucratic warfare, 73 pages long, with color-coded sections, footnotes, and appendices. Irrigation system, potentially violating water usage regulations. Raised garden beds, might exceed approved structural modifications. Corporate sponsorship signage, potentially breaching aesthetic guidelines. Mark received the complaint via certified mail, the envelope thick enough he used as a doorstop. He read it with a mixture of admiration and frustration. Karen had done her homework. But Mark had been in corporate marketing. He knew how to play long games. Within 48 hours, he had assembled a team. Not just gardening experts, but legal counsel, municipal zoning specialists, and public relations strategists. Green Harvest Organics was now fully invested in what had become more than just a garden dispute. It was a suburban cultural revolution. Their response to Karen's complaint was a 112-page document that not only refuted every single claim, but transformed each potential violation into a community benefit. Water usage demonstrated 30% more efficient than traditional landscaping. Structural modifications, approved by a structural engineer with impeccable credentials. Signage, compliant with every single municipal regulation. The local media caught wind of the story. A small suburban garden dispute was becoming something more, a narrative about innovation, community resistance, and the changing face of suburban living. Mark gave interviews, charming, articulate, presenting himself as a passionate community innovator. Karen, attempting to do the same, came across as bitter and obstinate. Public opinion began to shift dramatically. During one particularly heated community meeting, Karen attempted to present her case, but her meticulously prepared presentation was systematically dismantled, not by Mark, but by her own neighbors who were now fascinated by the potential of urban gardening. "This isn't about rules," one neighbor shouted. "This is about making our community better." The courtroom was a sterile environment of beige walls and fluorescent lighting, about as far from Mark's vibrant garden as possible. Yet here they were, Mark Thompson and Karen Henshaw, locked in a legal battle that had transformed from a simple landscaping dispute into a referendum on suburban living. Karen had leveraged every connection in her extensive network. Her husband, a semi-retired attorney, had helped draft the lawsuit. Her sister worked in local government. Her network of HOA connections spanned 3 counties. The lawsuit was brilliantly constructed, a labyrinthine document that challenged not just Mark's garden, but the very concept of urban agricultural initiatives in residential zones. Mark's legal team, funded increasingly by Green Harvest Organics and a growing coalition of sustainable living advocates, was equally prepared. The first day of testimony revealed the true depth of their conflict. It wasn't just about sunflowers or garden heights. It was a cultural war, conformity versus innovation, rigid suburban codes versus adaptive community development. Karen's expert witnesses spoke of property values, aesthetic consistency, and the importance of maintaining neighborhood standards. They presented meticulously crafted arguments about how unconventional landscaping could potentially decrease surrounding property values. Mark's witnesses were different. Urban agricultural experts, environmental psychologists, sustainable design professionals. They didn't just defend his garden, they presented it as a model for future community development. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a renowned urban planning expert, delivered testimony that would become a turning point. Suburban landscapes are living ecosystems, she explained, her voice calm and authoritative. Rigid, unchanging landscapes are not just aesthetically monotonous, they're environmentally unsustainable. Mr. Thompson's garden represents a critical shift in how we understand residential spaces. Karen's attorney tried to discredit the testimony, but the evidence was mounting. Quantitative data showed Mark's garden consumed less water, produced more local food, and had actually increased surrounding property values by creating a unique community identity. During a break, Karen confronted Mark in the courthouse hallway. "This isn't about gardens," she hissed. "This is about control, about maintaining order." Mark's response was unexpected. "No, Karen. This is about evolution, about allowing communities to grow, to change, to become something more than what they've always been." The look in his eyes wasn't triumphant. It was something more nuanced, a mixture of compassion and determination. When the first day of hearings concluded, the courtroom was electric with anticipation. Something significant was happening, and everyone knew it. The courthouse buzzed with an almost electrical tension. Reporters filled the benches, local news cameras positioned for maximum dramatic effect. What had started as a ridiculous dispute about garden heights had become a landmark case about community innovation. Judge Margaret Holloway was known for her no-nonsense approach. 62 years old, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see through legal smokescreens, she had presided over countless HOA disputes, but this one was different. When she entered, the room fell silent. "This case," she began, her voice carrying a weight of judicial authority, "represents more than a simple landscaping dispute. It is a referendum on how we define community spaces in the 21st century." Karen sat rigid, her perfectly pressed blazer armor of suburban conformity. Mark appeared relaxed, almost amused, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the formal proceedings. The judge reviewed the evidence meticulously. Water usage reports, property value assessments, environmental impact studies. Each document told a story of innovation challenging tradition. Mr. Thompson's garden, Judge Holloway declared, is not merely a collection of plants. It is a demonstration of adaptive urban agriculture. The evidence presented shows quantifiable community benefits that far outweigh aesthetic concerns. Karen's husband, seated behind her, gripped her hand. Something was happening that they hadn't anticipated. Furthermore, the judge continued, the HOA's attempts to restrict innovative landscaping practices are not just counterproductive, they are potentially detrimental to community development. The verdict was comprehensive. Not only was Mark's garden completely legal, the court recommended that the Pinewood Estates HOA update its bylaws to encourage, rather than restrict, sustainable landscaping practices. 6 months after the landmark court decision, Pinewood Estates looked nothing like its former self. Mark Thompson's garden had become a catalyst for community-wide transformation. Where once uniform lawns stretched like beige carpets, now diverse urban gardens sprouted. Neighbors who had previously argued about grass height now competed to create the most innovative sustainable landscapes. Green Harvest Organics had launched a neighborhood initiative, providing resources, seeds, and technical support. Karen Henshaw stood at the edge of her property, watching the metamorphosis with a complex mix of emotions. Her perfectly manicured lawn now featured raised beds of native plants, a small greenhouse, and much to her own surprise, a few strategically placed sunflowers. She hadn't completely changed. Her gardens were still meticulously organized, color-coded, with military precision, but they were gardens nonetheless. Mark approached her one Saturday morning, a basket of fresh produce in his hand. "Tomatoes," he offered. Karen hesitated, then accepted. The act felt like a small surrender, a quiet acknowledgement of everything that had changed. "I never wanted to destroy the community," she said, her voice softer than Mark had ever heard it. "I just wanted to protect it." Mark nodded. Sometimes protecting something means allowing it to grow, to change. The neighborhood around them was living proof. What had begun as a ridiculous dispute about garden heights had become a movement. Urban agriculture workshops now happened monthly. School groups visited to learn about sustainable landscaping. Property values had increased. Community engagement was at an all-time high. Green Harvest Organics had transformed from a sponsorship into a full community partnership. Mark had become a local hero, the unexpected champion of suburban innovation. As for Karen, she remained active in the HOA, But her role had changed. No longer the strict enforcer, she had become a facilitator of change, her bureaucratic skills now channeled into supporting community initiatives. The last rays of sunset painted the neighborhood, a landscape of diverse gardens, solar panels, and unexpected beauty. Mark watched, knowing that revolutions often start in the most unexpected places. 1 year after the Garden Revolution, an unexpected challenge emerged that would test the newfound community spirit of Pinewood Estates. A massive development corporation, Silverstone Realty, announced plans to purchase and demolish an adjacent green space, the last undeveloped plot in the neighborhood. Their proposal included a dense cluster of cookie-cutter townhouses that would dramatically alter the community's landscape and character. Mark discovered the plans while attending a routine city council meeting. The proposed development would destroy a vital wildlife corridor, disrupt local ecosystems, and fundamentally change the neighborhood's identity. To everyone's surprise, Karen was the first to mobilize opposition. Her meticulously organized approach transformed the community's resistance. Where Mark brought passion and vision, Karen brought strategic precision. She compiled environmental impact reports, coordinated community meetings, and leveraged her extensive bureaucratic network in ways Mark could never have imagined. This isn't just about protecting our property values, Karen told a packed community center. This is about preserving the ecosystem we've worked so hard to develop. The irony wasn't lost on Mark. The same woman who had once tried to restrict his garden was now leading a community environmental defense. Green Harvest Organics saw an opportunity. They provided resources, legal support, and media coverage. What had started as a corporate sponsorship had evolved into a genuine community partnership. As the battle with Silverstone Realty began, Mark and Karen found themselves unlikely allies. Their previous conflict had transformed into a collaborative relationship built on mutual respect and shared vision. The green space became more than just a piece of land. It was a symbol of everything they had fought for: community innovation, sustainable living, the power of collective action. But Silverstone Realty wasn't going to back down easily. They had deep pockets, political connections, and a determination to develop any